Hello, everyone. It's Liz, Derry Public Library's resident film nerd and one of the many reference librarians of the information desk. Welcome to Thursday, and Thursday means Hulu Recommendation Day. I decided to do another kind of documentary heavy recommendation for Hulu because I do think of the three main services, I think they do have the best nonfiction selection out there. So I have a few little like sort of grouped documentaries. And at first, we'll start out with two documentaries that are about authors. The first is a Hulu exclusive, and it's Margaret Atwood. A word after a word after a word is power. Definitely a little biased here. Margaret Atwood is one of my favorite authors. She wrote my favorite book, The Handmaid's Tale, which oddly enough, not a fan of the Hulu series of that one, but what are you going to do? This documentary is really good if you've only read The Handmaid's Tale or The Testaments, and you want to get a little bit more into her process as an author and just some of her general thoughts. I think she's just a really intriguing person, and I mean, I've read all of her books. And I would say if you are a fan of her, this is a must. And if you are someone who's just getting into her, this is a good thing to watch as well. The other author documentary I'd recommend, probably maybe even more so. I saw this in theaters last year. It was Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am. We unfortunately lost Toni late last year. A big loss to just general American culture. Author of many books, including Beloved, Paradise, The Bluest Eye. And this is kind of just her talking about her life and just how she became to be one of the biggest authors in the world. She's a very candid person. You watch this, you get the sense that she must be just a very fun person to hang out with. And it's a little interesting, especially towards the end of the movie, because I mean, this was all filmed and released. I think it was released literally weeks before she passed away. But you get the sense that either she might have known that something was, going to happen, or her friends knew, because it almost at the end comes across as a eulogy. But again, if you want another look at one of the most important authors in the latter half of the 20th century for America, Toni Morrison, The Pieces I Am is great. And also, side note, she is really funny. Again, I kind of wish I could have just hung out with her a bit because she seems like she'd be fun. Now on to some musical documentaries. The first is Joan Jett, Bad Reputation. If you're not familiar with Joan Jett, she was part of the girl rock group The Runaways in the late 70s, early 80s, later forged a solo career, and she's become a mainstay of women in rock and rock music in general. And this is again, she's another person who's pretty candid. So this is a fun watch. And the other one, again, this is definitely a big personal bias here. It's Grace Jones, Bloodlight and Bammy. I am a huge Grace Jones fan. Her music is great. Some people know her more from the movies. I kind of just knew her kind of as a model when I first found out who she was, but just like sort of who is this cool kind of androgynous looking woman? And she really is someone who can do it all. I think she can act. I just don't think she was given the proper vehicle in movies. She can make music. She can model. Her autobiography is a pretty good read. And this is a very good look at her life and look at her performing. And you have scenes of her performing on stage intercut with just her with her family, where she's acting just like a regular person. It is, if you are a Grace Jones fan, this is just a complete treat. But if you're not familiar with Grace Jones, I'm not sure how much you'll enjoy it, because it really does seem to be made for diehards. But still, it's a good look at a cultural icon. And speaking of cultural icons, there is another Hulu exclusive documentary called Ask Dr. Ruth. I think a lot of people know who Dr. Ruth is, the well-known adorable old lady doctor who answers your sex questions. I found this one to be really, I don't want to say cute, but she always has been a little bit cute to me. But it's kind of a refreshing look because she's just very, nothing phases her. And it's just interesting to hear like what her philosophies are, and hear her talk about how she views herself as kind of an icon. She's very no nonsense. I like her. And, despite some awkward subject matter for some, this is, I think, overall a pretty fun documentary. The other one, it's a good documentary, but you'll probably be angry watching it. It is called The Inventor Out for Blood. So this is an HBO one, so it might not be available for a super long time, but I recommend watching it. You've probably heard about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, the proposed blood testing company that turned out to be absolutely nothing. And there's a great book that was written about it called Bad Blood. This is, if you don't want to take the time to read the book, a good overview as to just how much of a mess her company was. And more, almost frighteningly, how long she was able to string people along without really producing anything. And if anything, this, along with some other great books like Live, Work, 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 Die, it should make us kind of second guess this vision we have of Silicon Valley, where it's just full of these mavericks and geniuses. You know, some of these people are con artists, and some of these people, they have great ideas, but they have no idea how to run businesses or how to even get results. And it's a sobering documentary. I'll say that. So we do have something that's science-based but a little more fun. This came out last year. Apollo 11, 2019 was the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. So this is definitely a documentary for everyone. And of course, Derry would love to watch something about space. We're one of the space capitals of the country. If you want a documentary that is an interesting look at the extremely wealthy of society, but also kind of a time capsule, I would recommend Queen of Versailles. So this is about the Seagulls who owned the Westgate resorts, which were timeshares in Florida. And this takes place around 2007. And if you know anything about 2007 to 2008, what came crashing down? So it's basically these people who built up a whole lot of wealth via timeshares and kind of watching it all crash down. And there's almost a tragicomic sense you get watching them try to realize, like, oh, we might need to live a little bit more like normal people. You almost get angry watching it, but at the same time, you kind of feel you feel sympathy for them, because it's hard whenever anyone loses anything. But it is a very it's entertaining, but also a little bit infuriating, but I found it to be a profoundly fascinating documentary. So the final two documentaries I'm going to recommend are two polar opposites, and you might be surprised which one I think the people come out nicer in. So the first one is called Jesus Camp. This was a pretty famous documentary that came out in 2006. It's about a camp called Kids on Fire, an evangelical camp, and run by a woman named Becky Fisher. I think when people think of like religious camps, like, oh yeah, we go and play guitars and sing and just play games. No, this woman was intent on raising warriors. And she actually is on camera saying, oh, those places in the Middle East that indoctrinate kids from being toddlers, well, they're good, but we should be doing that too, because we're the ones who are right. Becky Fisher and a lot of the adults in this do not come across looking great, and you actually feel terrible for these children because they're children and they have no control over what the adults subject them to. And you just kind of look at them like, you are kids having your heads pumped full of rhetoric about things that you can't even begin to understand. And there are going to be questioning some of this, and they are almost socially ostracized. It is a pretty sad thing to watch. On the other end, we have the documentary "Hail Satan?" ? So before you get scared, you might have heard of the Satanic Temple. They're actually based out of Boston, Salem/Boston area. And they started out as kind of a group that highlights the kind of the hypocrisy of certain things. So down in Arkansas, if someone wants to have the 10 Commandments on federal or state property, they then say, hey, can we have a Baphomet statue? As long as you're going to have one, you have to have the other. And this shows how what started out as a joke became a genuine group of people who are united to protect the rights of the underdog, protect the rights of the other. And it actually comes across as pretty heartwarming. And honestly, I look at these two and I'm like, I would totally rather hang around with the TST people than any of the adults at the Kids on Fire camp. I mean, help those kids, but no, those adults. So I hope you watch at least one of these videos, and I will see you tomorrow with Freebie Friday. Thank you.